Welcome to the Internet Marketing Funnel Podcast. I'm David Bain. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the podcast brought to you by InternetMarketingFunnel.com. This is part 4 of an interview with Mike Wilson from All Media Scotland on writing an effective press release. In this part of the conversation we discussed the differences between targeting local and national press, as well as the optimum length of press releases. You talked a little bit about local press, and it's good obviously to appear in the local press, certainly if you've got a local angle. Are there different angles that you would actually take depending on the type of media that you were dealing with? So if you wanted to appear on the radio, would you actually phone them up to demonstrate your speaking ability instead of actually just submitting a press release?
Well, if you send a media release to a TV news desk or to the BBC Radio Scotland news desk or whoever, I mean it's a very, very competitive world that you're entering. I mean, you're going to be up against hundreds of press releases that have been sent that day. So you really do have to have a pretty knockout opening paragraph for anyone on these news desks to linger longer and be interested to find out more. The very obvious thing when you're trying to interest a local newspaper is that you've obviously got to play up the local angle. There's no point in running a story about something happening in Coatbridge and then trying to sell it on to the Fife Free Press. So the local angle is very important when you're dealing with local newspapers.
Do you always include images, perhaps a photograph of an individual with a press release?
If you're sending it by email, you're probably best not to, actually. You're probably as well saying at the bottom of the press release, images are available on request. It's just that a lot of newspaper IT systems struggle with dealing with so many attachments, and if you're clogging up their email list with big attachments, they'll probably not thank you for it. So I would suggest that the best thing is to offer any pictures on request, so if they're interested in the story, they'll come back to you and ask for an image. That said, they may still prefer to send their own photographer out to capture images because that's something that's within their control. But you should offer images if you can, but not necessarily send them out at the same time as you send out the initial press release.
So are you positive about the future of traditional media outlets like newspapers, or do you think we're moving into a solely digital world?
This is a very, very big question you're asking. And on the one hand, you could be quite pessimistic about the future of newspapers, the future of newsprint. Because the evidence suggests that they're all declining, they're all struggling for sales. There's not really a newspaper in the country that's not suffering some decline in terms of its sales. The newspapers themselves are trying to address that by producing kind of online versions, and some newspapers are doing that more effectively than others. Whether, though, that spells the demise of newsprint as a medium, I suspect not. There's something unique about sitting down and reading a newspaper that you're never going to be able to replicate online. And so therefore I think there will always be a place for newspapers. They're portable, they're easy to scan, they are there's something tactile about reading a newspaper, and that's always going to remain. But newspapers, nevertheless, have got to adapt to the changing times, and they are trying to, some more successfully than others.
There are quite often different versions of stories, one for an online version, one for an offline version. The online tend to be sometimes shorter, even paragraphs shorter as well. Would you actually try and tailor a press release differently if you're actually tailoring it towards some kind of online publication?
Probably. Certainly we do try to keep our stories fairly short, although that said, we do also carry opinion pieces which are in the realms of 700 words long. But no, there does seem to be less of an appetite for big, chunky blocks of text. on a computer screen as I might be for newsprint. Whether you actually have to go to the effort of changing your style so radically for one medium to another if you're trying to interest them, I'm not so sure. I think the general rule of thumb is that you should keep any media release pretty short. You should keep the paragraphs pretty short. If you accept that actually the game is over and done with, if you fail to attract them with the opening paragraph, then you should just concentrate all your efforts on doing a good opening paragraph. And if a journalist is interested in the story thereafter and wants to follow it up, they will follow it up, and they will probably write it up in their own words. And so therefore, for you to kind of get too hung up on what appears in the whole of the media release, perhaps you shouldn't. You perhaps should just concentrate on getting the story right and getting the journalist interested in the first place before you start worrying about how long the rest of the media release is and whether it should be in short or long paragraphs.
It's interesting what you say about the opening paragraph. You know, it's I knew it was important. You know, perhaps not quite as imperative as you're obviously emphasising. You know, so are there any tips that you'd like to leave with people to actually format their whole press release in as an efficient and effective a manner as possible?
Well, all press releases really should be relatively short. I've seen press releases running into 3 A4 pages, and I suspect that anyone who receives that, their heart will sink and they'll not even read the opening paragraph, maybe not even read the headline before they're tempted to throw it into the bin. So something that is relatively short then feels as if it's not going to be quite as hard work as it might be. Every press release should either be available for immediate release or embargoed at some time in the future. Usually the convention is a minute after midnight on the day that you want media organisations to pick it up. Don't forget, of course, to put contact details for more information at the bottom of the press release. But I just return to what I constantly say, which is that if you don't actually do it with the opening paragraph, you won't do it at all. So you've got to spend a lot of time on that opening paragraph. And if your press release is to start with that old formula of some organisation is doing something somewhere, that takes up a hell of a lot of time, hell of a lot of words, but actually probably doesn't even tell you the story. So do concentrate your thoughts on trying to work out what is the impact and how can I convey that impact. And you may also find a trick that many writers use is that they try to write an opening paragraph out. It's not quite working, it's not quite singing. So actually what they'll do is they'll effectively turn it upside down and see if it reads better if they actually turn the structure of the opening paragraph upside down. Very often that has the effect of very often has the effect that you stumble across something that's a wee bit more active rather than passive. But you just play around. There's a bit of word sculpting involved in the opening paragraph. And with every word into that opening paragraph, the more likely people are going to bail out of it. So remember that the most important word in your whole press release is the first word, and the second most important word is the second word, and so on and so forth. So don't waste time trying to get to the story, and it's taking you 10 or 15 words to even get close, because by 10 or 15 words, people will have started to bail out from your story already, and if you've lost them, you won't get them back.
That's the end of this podcast, but you can subscribe to updates which tell you as soon as another episode is published at internetmarketingfunnel.com/podcast.